Okay, so I think we will go ahead and get started. We might have some more people file in. Just want to say welcome. Happy 50th Earth Day to everybody. My name is Andrea Norris, and I work for OSU Campus Recycling and Surplus Property, and I'm also privileged to serve as the advisor to the club we sponsor, the Waste Watchers. I'll be helping moderate our event tonight. Thanks for coming. It's great to see a bunch of faces. I'm really happy that we get to come together on Earth Day. So we're going to move into our first segment, which is about where we will hear stories about the first ever Earth Day and the beginnings of recycling programs at Oregon State. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that we are more focused on our speakers. Our speakers are John Matthews, who was a student at OSU on the first Earth Day in 1970, and Rick Barnett, who came to OSU in 1974 and played a large role in expanding the recycling program here. So we will go ahead and get started with John when John is ready. Are you ready, John?
Okay, I'll give it a try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, and it's exciting to hear that there's some of you that were with us at the first Earth Day in 1970. That was really something. I'm hoping that we can give you a glimpse of what it was like for those of you that weren't here, and maybe stir some memories for those that are there. Rick, are you there?
I'm here.
Good. Well, Rick and I are going to experiment with trying to tell a story between the two of us here without getting it too confusing for everybody. But I thought I'd start off first, and with Rick able to butt in whenever he wants to here. But to sort of set the screen or the environment for what was happening in 1970, you have to go back a few years earlier. Probably one of the most important environmental education events of the century up to then was a publication by a biologist named Rachel Carson, who published Silent Spring. It was an international bestseller describing the impact of pesticides and chemicals on the environment and how that ultimately affected all living things in the environment, including people. One of the biggest things that came to the attention of Americans, of course, was bald eagle, which was then down to just double digits in the continental United States. But also happening at the same time was the Vietnam War. We had a lot of people very upset about that, and there was a lot of action being taken throughout the United States, and particularly on college campuses. And one of the most effective ways of getting people's attention was through teach-ins. They had teach-in rallies throughout the college and university campuses throughout the US. At the same time, there was people that were supporting the environment too, but didn't know quite what to do. Among the leaders of this movement was a senator from Wisconsin named Gaylord Nelson. He had long been an environmental leader, even though that he had been a senator since, well, 63. Well, it was in 1963 that he had convinced John F. Kennedy to take a national speaking tour to discuss conservation issues. It gives you a little perspective of that. Back in 1969, he wanted to, things were happening. He really felt it was important, with Rachel Carson's book drumming up so much attention, to bring more attention and action towards environmental awareness and action. That year, as Rick can attest to, there is the largest to date oil spill in the Santa Barbara Channel. And maybe Rick, you can tell a little bit about your firsthand experience with that.
Well, at that time, the environment was just emerging as a topic that was becoming more widely understood, for one thing. And the oil spills and oil problems in the Santa Barbara Channel were quite old, and I was at UC Santa Barbara when that one occurred. And you know, it was mixed in with a lot of the war issues, but clearly that stimulated a lot of more discussion and concern about environmental issues.
Well,
I wanted to jump in and show something. I think this is about far enough. This is a hard copy invitation to the first Earth Day. This was sent out. It wasn't an address, so someone put this into an envelope, addressed it, and sent it to Eco Alliance. And it has a lot of the story that John was just telling in regard to the role of the government and senator and whatnot. And I don't think many of these exist, so I just wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to see what it was like back then. So I'll take it back to you, John.
okay, Rick, thank you. Well, as you can see, it was organized on a national basis that in a meeting towards the end of that year, just after the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland burst into flames 5 stories high and on national television, it also got some attention that helped fan the flames, so to speak. And they decided to have a National Environmental Teach-In on April 22nd of 1970. They timed it so to maximize to the greatest extent of student participation. So coming back now to Corvallis, that the honors school, the honors club, decided to take on that project for Oregon State University. And they expanded it through an organization they called Eco Alliance of a bunch of organizations and individuals in the Corvallis community, as well as individual students, not necessarily in the honors club at OSU. They had a lot of things that they had planned, focused on the quad at OSU and also in the Memorial Union. We had gazebos from all sorts of different groups and organizations on the quad. We had movies showing day and night in the Memorial Union, illustrating pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and even overpopulation, and the impacts that it had on all life, including human life in the world. It was interesting enough. The key teaching tool that was promoted both by the national people and at Oregon State was a recycling program, a recycling demonstration project, which was formed for all the academic reasons of recycling, taking what could have been pollution out of landfills, and also reduced pollution at industrial mills, whether it's a paper mill or glass manufacturing plant or aluminum refinery. All those had reduced pollution because that material to be used had already been refined once. And so it had less energy consumption, it had less pollution. So there were a lot of beautiful things, but the one thing that they only had an idea about was it was a hands-on thing that the public could identify with. And in those days, we had what was called source-separated recycling. In other words, you had to do a lot of work in order to get that material ready to recycle. You had to separate glass into 3 different colors. You had to separate office paper from magazines, from newspapers, from cardboard. You had to separate tin cans and take the labels off and flatten them by hand if you could.
John,
all those things were requirements.
Hey, John, let me try to show them one example of how hard people had to work.
Okay.
This will just take a second. So this is a picture of, this is a couple of you, this is a little later than he's talking about, but the idea that it was a personal commitment to do more work in order to minimize your impact. So this is actually right after the recycling center moved off campus up to the Corvallis disposal. There was a little girl who had the biggest ball of aluminum foil that I'd ever seen. And I was so struck by it that I've kept it ever since. Think how much work this girl did. Okay, back to you.
That's great, Rick. Well, that just demonstrates some of the physical actions that can have an impact on people's mind and body. Well, you all know just the process of taking that paper off the tin can and separating, taking the rings off of the old aluminum ring on a wine bottle. I don't know if most people don't remember that unless you're my age, but those actions caused a physiological impact with the brain that your muscles were used to doing that. It's kind of like brushing your teeth every night. Once you get in the habit, you do it all the time. And if you don't, for whatever reason, you feel like you're missing something. Something's wrong. I'm not doing it right. And the same with recycling, preparing those materials for recycling. Oregonians in those days, if they went to another state that didn't have as much recycling going on, they saw people throwing stuff away, they go, ah! It just didn't seem natural once you get into that habit. So recycling had a lot of beneficial effects for a teaching aid. Well, that happened as a result of a lot of other things happened from that point. And on the national level, later that year, President Richard Nixon promoted and endorsed the development of initiation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. Also from that, there's came Environmental Education Act, Occupational and Health Act, the Clean Air Act. A couple of years later came the Clean Water Act, and a little bit later, the Endangered Species Act. All of that from the public acknowledgement and buy-in to the Earth Day teaching event that happened.
Hey, John, just want to butt in and say y'all have, this is your 5-minute mark.
Okay, thanks. We'll hurry up here. So OSU was doing a lot of neat stuff. I'll get out of there and let Rick talk a little bit about the details of OSU. But one of the things besides recycling program, I was working at that time as the manager of the recycling program, but it was a non-paid job. Rick actually got paid for the work he was doing because it had developed so much, but Rick put it together there. But helped earn enough money to make ends meet. I got a part-time job with Extension Service. Another thing that Oregon State University, as a land grant, now Sea Grant College, was doing was reaching out into the population in the rural areas especially. And how do you recycle there? Well, Extension Service had what they called EAP, Extension Environmental Education Program. So I went out and talked with 4-H groups, scout groups in Burns and LeGrand, Medford, all those areas. And in doing so, tried to teach people about recycling, but also found out, hey, there's some challenges here. Even if you collected stuff, it's pretty damn expensive to get it all the way to markets, which are located basically in Portland. So later on, as my career of 42 years in the recycling industry started by Earth Day, I was the legislative chairman for the Association of Oregon Recyclers, and we were able to convince the legislature to include recyclables as if they were agricultural commodities. In other words, they would be exempt of the high tariffs used to backhaul materials from Burns to Portland. So you could use, you could negotiate your own tariff just like an agricultural product rather than having to pay freight like raw finished lumber or something like that. So that was one of the things that happened. We also had the bottle bill, of course. We had that Tom McCall put forth. We had something called pollution control tax credits that cleaned up the Willamette River that Tom McCall put forward. Later on, another governor helped use that same concept of pollution control tax credits to make Oregon the very first state to retool its entire industrial base to accept secondary materials as major feedstock. In other words, a paper mill up to then couldn't tolerate the tape on some of the cardboard boxes, the magazines in the newspapers, the metal contamination at Owens, Illinois, where they manufacture new glass containers. Why? Because they couldn't take the time to make the investments to clean up that material, which ultimately, if they used it, would cost them less energy and less money ultimately to use. So Tom McCall, well, like pollution control tax credits, he called it a carrot and a stick. If you cleaned up the Willamette River, you'd get the carrot of a tax credit. If you didn't, you'd get the fine of the big pollution stick fine. We didn't have the fines if an industry didn't use recycled materials, but it encouraged every major industrial company in Oregon to retool using those tax credits so they could now accept secondary materials as main feedstock to supplement their stuff. We were the first state to do that to our industry. So I've babbled enough. Rick, take it away.
And Rick, we've got about 15 minutes for your speech as well as Q&A. So if we could take it maybe no more than 5. And
Okay.
we have lots of time for Q&A as well.
I'll talk fast. What I was presented with was there was an interest in getting a better understanding of the history here in town. I came to town in 1974, just after John had left. And Eco Alliance, I inadvertently met some people who worked there. I was work study eligible, so there was a work study job crushing glass, and I took it and became the manager soon after and stayed with it. So in those days, this is a little pin. This was the Eco Alliance. Whoops, that's upside down. People in this is our logo. This is as a student organization. It was taken under the wing of ASOSU, and we had, when I got there, there was a desk and an office in where all the other ASOSU people worked in the Memorial Union at that time. And by then, the system that had been left by John and his people included a small drop-off center in the parking lot of Oceanography at 26th and Monroe. And that's where the public was able to drop it. And there's always been a drop-off opportunity at the co-op. There's a lot of connection between us and them for many years. And so everything had to get taken to a processing yard that's out to the west behind where the new fire station was built on 35th. And there was a lot of material backed up when I got involved, and so we worked it down and started looking around campus for other opportunities to make recycling happen. And I got this idea to go a little bit bigger with it in 1975 and made a proposal to the administration to have a campus-wide program. So I'm looking at the letter that in March of 1975, the Dean of Administration, was a very small administration at that time, the number 2 guy, basically told the physical plant, the director of the physical plant, that OSU is going to start recycling, and as a campus operation by his people who would collect it. And fortunately, at that time, John had secured a job in Salem with the Garten Foundation and was able to say, doesn't matter how much you collect, we can buy it. So in the spring of 1975, there was a system set up with barrels, with container, some kind of a bin system in each office that was designated for recycling. There was a contrasting sticker that we put onto all the trash cans in order to, kind of put them on a level field there. We we'd tell people they're going to send it to the dump. And that was implemented in the spring. In the fall, we were starting to take a little closer look. We went further. We surveyed the trash. We found other little pockets of recycling, a lot of empty dumpsters that were eliminated and saved a lot of money. And by the end of spring term in 1976, the system was pretty much in place. It was in all the buildings, and everything was collected. It had become part of the university activity. And I wrote, in May of 1976, I wrote what was my final report about the program. And John knows more about the people who took over from there, because they continued working with him to buy the paper. Just a couple of the other things that I wanted to say about that time, because 1976 was a pretty vibrant time in environmental issues, and the election of Jimmy Carter, and the information was everywhere. There were a lot of different avenues through which anybody who had any interest in knowing how serious pollution issues were, you could have that information. And there were a lot of interesting things coming from the government, from DQ, Family Energy Watch. They did these calendars a couple times. Every month, just packed with every bit of information you could possibly want to know about how you could do better in your house on this and that and everything. There was a lot of posters that were very cleverly educational and made it clear what you could do. The other thing that went on during those years, during Carter's administration, was that there were a lot of federal agencies that, here's this one, I just bumped into this flyer here, Environmental Thrust, a citizen's project for a better America. This is a government agency. This is the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This is not what you would find an organization named that today. Here's another one, Choices for Conservation. That came from the EPA. So there was a major buy-in by the people who worked in the government when Jimmy Carter was president, and that combined with the all the the limits to growth in that period and before, and the massive research just kept pouring out. So everybody was left. When I left the program, I was actually hired by the disposal company and started the community recycling that ultimately led to the red bins, and then the big roll carts. But at that time, Corvallis was what I would say, a leader in those areas. The paper program was the first of its kind at OSU, at any institution or campus, and it was used as a model for the first EPA publication on how to do office paper recycling. So there's definitely a history. And I think what we're going to do is roll into slowly moving towards what's going on now. But there was a lot that went on, and we just hope that everybody wants to keep doing it.
Thank you so much. I think we will go ahead and move into some Q&A with the time we have left. And so if you have a question, please virtually raise your hand by going to the participants panel, or enter your question into the chat window, and I'll try my best to call on folks who do raise their hands. But our first question has already come directly to me in the chat window. This is a question for John or Rick. What do you attribute OSU leaders' support for the idea of expanding recycling? For example, was it a general broad appreciation for the outdoors and natural resources, or was it something else?
Go ahead, Rick.
Well, I guess I made the final sell. There was a lot of selling went on before I got there, because there was a physical area that was dedicated to the recycling and trucks and all these things. But as far as what actually got the administration to start this program, I had developed some relationships with other people in the administration, and sort of worked up to it. And so it wasn't just me. It was the times that I think that the message just had to be put to the right person at the right time.
And John, you had said that we at OSU had done sort of a demonstration, what single one-time recycling collection event on that or first Earth Day that kind of like, there was a lot of, so much interest from that it ended up being for the formation of a regular recycling collection site on campus and then like a collection program from there. Like, is there anything you want to add in terms of like what you think motivations were to like basically go beyond that one-day Earth Day event?
Well, I think the people who were involved as volunteers in that, making that recycling event happen, they learned how to do it. And by the end of the week, instead of just going out and drinking beer saying, yay, we did it, you know, and we can go home now, there's all that stuff. And the public was so supportive of it. We just couldn't let it go. And right now, it was such a good thing that had happened. We needed to keep it going. And it was hard to turn off. I mean, the public kept on bringing that stuff. We had to keep cleaning it up. And so there was a core of about a dozen or so volunteers that kept it going on a volunteer basis. We were partly sponsored by the Department of Outdoor Recreation. I think that's what it was called in those days. And they kind of acted as a group of us were kind of a steering committee, and we kept it going for the 3 or 4 years before the physical plant finally decided this was happening. Enough people were excited about it. And not only that, but the waste paper coming back was money coming back to help offset some of the costs. I'm not sure that it offset all the costs, but at least there was some income coming in. And the program that Rick put together was designed to have as little out of the ordinary type work for the participant, the office worker, as possible. You had an extra little divider on the desk or an extra cart on the inside the waste paper basket to put the trash in or the recycling in. And you had to train the janitors to get those separate. But beyond that, it was a pretty cut and dry thing. And the feedback of the publicity, the environmental benefits of this helped stimulate the participants to keep it going. But I think it was a crew of citizens. Some of them were citizens in Corvallis. There were several oceanography graduate workers that seemed to be carrying the load of helping keep the trucks going and coming up with ways to make different machines work better. And so all those things help contribute to the success at the campus.
Great. And then I see, Janine, you have your hand raised. Would you like to chime in or ask a question? Echo. Hold on, Janine, we can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, great.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm not sure this is the right part in the program to ask this question, but I remember the juice and the energy from that period of time. And I was a participant at OSU during that time. And I just want to remind people, you know, Kent State happened 2 weeks later. I mean, there was a lot of energy for social change. And right now, recycling's in the doldrums because China, our big client for material, has shut the door. We're doing things like sending commingled recycling all the way to Colorado to be sorted. I've always felt like we missed some kind of a boat by allowing those things to disperse. The economy of scale, I think, is backfiring. And I'm wondering if there's any movement to sort of localize or bring back recycling, using recycled products more locally and being able to not depend on foreign clients or out of state processing. Is this the time to ask that?
We're really more past focused, but I don't know if John or Rick have something they would like to chime in on that. I know you're kind of not as much in the biz anymore, but maybe there's something you'd like to add.
I think both of us, because we worked in the era of source separation, That was really the key, and that's what's causing the problem. It is an economy of scale. There was an impetus politically to go for tonnage as opposed to quality, and what
Yes.
we used to focus on was quality. So it was a little shocking to me to see the commingled trend take over, because it was our feeling that if you kept working at it, that more and more people would learn those little habits John mentioned, and they, once they're established, they're there. And so we had done a lot to do that in this town when the commingled thing came up and was introduced. And it's the whole issue of quality, and you don't have people saving big rolls of aluminum foil anymore. There is no, trying to maintain materials at their highest value is no longer part of the system.
Well, I might add, I agree with what Rick has said. It's, we tried to get more people involved, and the way to make more people involved is make it easier for them. And in making it easier, can you hear me okay? Okay. By commingling materials, we lost some of the drive for education. And it became, as corporations got involved, to be competitive, you wanted to sell that stuff, as easily as possible. And sometimes we went for a situation that encouraged at the old days, 10 years ago, materials was exported to China because they had a lot of hand labor that were doing really nasty things to try to clean up that material. The Chinese industry needed that material for the various environmental benefits of using that material. But in doing so, the American collection system got spoiled, along with the European collection system got spoiled. And so when China was able to do a better job and not put so much just horrible work conditions, they didn't want to put their people through that. So they started banning all the stuff that contained dirty diapers and just materials so polluted that it didn't make sense. And so the easy markets that collectors in the United States were sending to China dried up, and they were reluctant to put in the cleaning equipment. You can technically clean it up, but it costs a lot more money. And so that system has not yet been revitalized. So it's partly economy of scale to get enough material to run it, put in the mechanics to run it effectively without the pollution, but it's difficult. We have not yet retooled to deal with that.
Thanks for those questions. I think we will move on. I know we didn't fully address your questions, so if we have time in future Q&A, we could probably come back to that. But our next segment is going to be looking at the present day. And so this, what is happening at OSU now in regards to waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. Our speakers are current OSU students Taylor Munro and Alyssa Mannigel. So Taylor, when you're ready, you can take it away and screen share.
Thank you. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so as Andrea mentioned, I'm a student here at OSU, and I'm also an outreach program assistant at Campus Recycling, and I'm also a coordinator for the Waste Watchers Club. During this section, I will be talking about OSU's present day waste reduction efforts. First, let's start with the basics, how we recycle today. We, on campus, Campus Recycling collects 3 types of recycling: paper, bottles and cans, and cardboard. And we collect from every building on campus from thousands of bins. OSU also has some special recycling opportunities for departments, such as batteries, film plastic, and hardback books. Campus Recycling provides recycling, compost, and trash receptacles for on-campus events through its event recycling program. There are a variety of places that compost on campus: every dining center, most cafes, some residence halls, and at events. Departments on campus can also participate in the department composting program, wherein they receive a pail to place in common areas such as break rooms and empty it into an outdoor cart that Campus Recycling services. We are an ag school, so we do have some animal bedding that can be composted. Lastly, landscape debris is piled and periodically ground up to be placed on the campus grounds, reducing the need to purchase bark. Composting is a major part of waste diversion efforts at OSU, which we will see on the next slide. During the 2018-2019 academic year, 2.6 million pounds of materials were recycled and composted on OSU's campus for a recycling rate of 39%. If we count the estimated weight of materials reused from the sale of surplus goods and collection of donations from residence halls at the end of the year, that rate jumps to 48%. You can see in the comparative numbers that OSU recycles better than the national or local county rates, but underperforms the state of Oregon's average. All of these stats demonstrate that the university is performing comparatively well, but also has much room to improve. Surplus property is a key program for waste reduction efforts. They are charged with collecting all property owned but no longer needed by OSU and transferring it back to OSU departments, state and local governments, qualified nonprofit organizations, and the public. This includes everything: office supplies, furniture, computer, lab equipment, bicycles, motorcycles and vehicles, marching band uniforms, athletic gear, and sometimes even buildings and research ships from Hatfield Marine Science Center. This program is key in promoting the reuse of materials, providing low-cost goods to on and off-campus community, which reduces the need to purchase new goods, and keeps funds within the university. Surplus property operates the OSU store, which is normally open for public sales twice per week, but is selling merchandise online in the meantime. So I would like to ask you all a question. Has anyone here today been to the OSU surplus store to buy something for your office or home? So you can either raise your hand or type in the chat or click yes on the participant page. Yay. Great, and if you haven't been, you should, because when they reopen, they have some really great stuff. Now we'll go over a handful of programs at OSU that all contribute to reducing waste on campus. Surplus teams up with Campus Recycling and University Housing and Dining Services each spring to collect donations from residence halls as residents move out. They can donate clean, reusable goods and sealed non-perishable food in labeled donation bins in every res hall. Last year, over 11 tons were collected and given to local nonprofits. Eco-Reps began at OSU in the fall of 2012, helping move the OSU campus and student experience forward with sustainability programming and engagement. Eco-Reps are responsible for encouraging a culture of sustainability in the residence halls in which they live. They educate residents about sustainable lifestyles and resources, including conducting outreach to educate their peers on proper recycling, followed by waste audits to measure success, and running their hall's composting program. Last year, the Eco-Reps composted over 1,700 pounds of material. Grads Give Back is a student-started program seeking to reduce barriers that under-resourced students might experience as they near graduation. It also breathes new life into what are traditionally single-use garments by allowing graduates to donate their gown for someone to use next year. Grads Give Back is the result of collaboration among the staff of Associated Students of OSU, Campus Recycling, the Memorial Union, and the Valley Library. Partners plan to continue this program this year after OSU commencement is rescheduled. Eco2Go is run by University Housing Dining Services, UHDS, and sends all dining center to-go food orders in reusable containers, which customers return for sanitation and reuse at multiple collection points on campus. It was started in 2012 by UHDS staff as an opt-in pilot program and became a standard in 2015. Moving to a standard required program was fairly unique for a college of our size, and dining still receives inquiries about other institutions trying to set up their own programs. OSU estimates they have eliminated the use of at least 425,000 disposable to-go containers annually. Adopt a Bottle was started in 2016 with the help of UHDS surplus property the Nutrition and Dietetics Club, and Community Engagement and Leadership to recirculate reusable bottles to students. This program is on a hiatus at the moment, but leadership has changed hands to the Memorial Union, which will resume the program later on. The Last Damn Straw campaign was founded in the summer of 2018 by OSU grad students Kimberly Preston and Katie Nalvin to combat plastic waste in the ocean. UHDS and the Memorial Union Retail Food Services committed to using paper straws with Last Damn Straws urging in the fall of 2018. In 2017, UHDS received a grant from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality to purchase a system called LeanPath, a comprehensive computerized wasted food tracking system. The program has helped dining centers become more aware of their production habits, and early numbers suggest as correlated with reductions in food waste, food costs, and trash waste reported from dining centers. In the fall of 2019, UHDS and the Human Services Resource Center, HSRC, launched the Food for Thought meal program. Using extra food generated by our campus dining locations, they create pre-packed, balanced meal options that are available for purchase at a reduced price. Some are also provided free to eligible students at the dining center or the HSRC. I will now turn it over to Alyssa, who will talk about present day highlights specifically from the Waste Watchers Club.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So Waste Watchers is a group run by Campus Recycling, whose mission is to engage students and the community in waste reduction at OSU by providing educational programming, meaningful opportunities for action, and empowerment of future leaders. I've been a member of the club since earlier this year. Repair fairs are an event that happens once a term, hosted at the OSU store. It is open to everyone and is free. You can bring your broken items, and volunteers will help you learn how to repair your belongings so that you can continue to use them. Demos are also offered to learn more skills like DIY green cleaning or shoe repairs. The goal of the repair fair is to save resources, save money, and get more use out of your items. Repair skills usually offered include clothing, housewares, bikes, and electronics. We're not able to offer a normal repair fair this term, but stay tuned as we're exploring ways to stream some video demonstrations for you this term. The question that I have is, has anyone here today been to our repair fairs? Please raise your hand in the chat or raise your hand, type in the chat, or use the yes feature. Awesome. Okay, Recyclemania is an annual 8-week recycling competition, and we focus on the Oregon Classic against the Ducks. The goal is to recycle the most materials within the 8-week time frame, and OSU won this year for the 3rd year in a row. The Waste Watchers Club focuses on outreach and recycling education for this event. The school supplies giveaway is a newly piloted program this year. We teamed up with Surplus Property to get school supplies that come in through that program. And then with the Human Services Resource Center, we distribute the supplies for free to students and community members who need them most. Our first event was last term, and we got over 120 people who took nearly all of our supplies in just 3 hours. I'll end with one final highlight, our reusable cup campaign, which is going on now. This is a proposal we have developed with other student organizations and are in conversations with dining and retail food services about. Under our proposed plan, all dining plan members would receive a quality bottle for free, supplied by UHDS. All customers paying with their OSU ID card using Dining Dollars or Orange Rewards will be required to purchase all beverages in a reusable container, whereas those paying with cash or credit card may purchase them in disposable cups, but with a 10-cent fee. With this proposal, we would eliminate an estimated 3/4 of all disposable cups consumed and thrown away on campus. This program would save the university money as early as year 1 and at least within the first 2 years of the program, as well as every year after that. The environmental benefits from this program would be significant and will directly lead to OSU's goal of carbon emissions reduction. Students, staff, and faculty have shown support for this proposal, and we were planning to collect more petition signatures and present them to dining and retail food services this term, but As you might have guessed, there has been a change of plans. We are planning to continue talks with decision makers over summer and do more student outreach when the campus opens back up again. I think this is the next Q&A section.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. All right, I don't think we have any questions, Andrea.
Are we sure? That was a lot of information, I realized. So
I
is
know.
there, we did it pretty rapidly. So
Oh yeah,
is there additional info people would like?
yeah, Coral, go ahead.
There, can you see and
Yep.
or hear me?
Both.
Okay, perfect. So my question was about what, if anything, has been done for the products that are sold on campus, like at the different markets and things around campus, if there's been an effort to reduce plastic waste there or to help address other issues with inclusivity, like providing silicone straws or other products like that, or like reusable menstrual products and things for students who don't necessarily have the opportunity to buy things off campus.
Yeah, that's a great question. From my knowledge, I don't think there are any programs involved with that. If Lily or Andrea want to chime in if they know of any, but I do think that's something a lot of us in the environmental field could work towards on campus, because that's definitely a huge issue right now, for sure. So thank you for bringing that up.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
I would just say that I have seen like some silicone straws in the dining halls recently. It looks like maybe dining is thinking about that and providing them, which is nice. And also, I'm excited for the program that you're working on, Coral. I don't know any updates on it, but to provide reusable menstrual cups to the Human Services Resource Center. I think that's really cool. Just plugging your event for you.
Thanks, Lily.
And then I see, Jeanette, you mentioned, is there a future plan for No Food Left Behind Campus Edition? So the Human Services Resource Center does have a Twitter account where they do post when there is like extra food on campus, and anyone can just like go and bring a container. And sometimes there are prepackaged meals or from like an event. And so I know that's definitely helped out with a lot of the food waste on campus. Yes, Eat Free OSU. Thank you, Haley. And that's definitely helped with that food waste issue.
There was another question. Can we donate to programs?
I know that HSRC definitely always takes some food donations and menstrual products, that type of thing. There are always like, we just had some food drives, but no one's on campus right now, so those aren't going on. But usually there are ways to donate, and those are usually on OSU's website.
I can't raise my hand because I'm
Yeah.
on the host. But Jeanette was actually talking about the No Food Left Behind program that is a Corvallis-wide campaign, and whether we're going to bring that back to OSU. So just to clarify, we don't have specific plans around that. I know we were intentionally setting that aside for this year to kind of allow No Food Left Behind Corvallis to kind of firm up all of their kind of tabling activities, their canned presentations, and kind of then maybe we can revisit for next year if it's a good time to see if we might be able to adopt and adapt those tools for OSU use. So that's about all that I'll share on that. But thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you. And then I also see that you, Jeanette, you asked about donating school supplies, and Dre, I'm also not sure on that if there's a policy, since we're also using surplus property materials, if that's allowed.
It might be possible to have a private individual donate directly to the Human Services Resource Center, the HSRC, which hosts the event. And they also might want school supplies to give out at their regular food pantries as well.
Yeah.
So I would refer you to the HSRC. And if you need, you're welcome to follow up with us if you'd like more information about that.
Thank you. All right. I don't see any more questions.
I also got a private chat stating, just to clarify about the availability of straws. Dining does have reusable straws, but they are steel, not silicone right now.
Great, thank you. Okay. I think we're good.
Any more questions before we move on? Okay. So thanks for that Q&A. Now we'll enter into the final segment of our event where we'll focus on the future. So let me get my screens sharing back up for you. Oops, sorry. So this section we will be led through by OSU student Lily Butler. So Lily, when you are ready, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Lily, and I'm an outreach program assistant for Campus Recycling and a coordinator for the Waste Watchers Club. So you can go to the next slide. So while OSU has always considered itself to be a sustainable school, the definition of sustainability has been evolving for some time. The general definition of sustainability is meeting the needs for the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. For a long time, sustainability was all about ecology and the environment, and as most of you probably know, OSU has been a pioneer of conservation and restoration research in our College of Forestry. But throughout the years, the sustainability movement has been shifting worldwide to include more aspects of life besides the environment, and OSU has followed suit and adjusted its sustainability goals to include all 3 pillars of sustainability. So the 3 pillars of sustainability that you can see here in this picture are the environment, society, and the economy. All are equally important and intertwined, and one cannot be accomplished without the other. You can see each of these pillars demonstrated in the work that Taylor and Alyssa talked about, and we are continuing to expand our programming to be more balanced towards all 3 pillars each year. Preferred future is another term or way to think about sustainability that emphasizes that social and economic sustainability are just as important as environmental sustainability. The preferred future method of framing allows us to take all 3 pillars into account and envision what the best version of the future is for us, even if it seems impossible now. With that bit of background, we're going to move all of you into small group discussions. Then I'll have you answer this prompt. John and Rick had a preferred future that involved things that probably seemed difficult to achieve or nearly impossible before they achieved it. With that in mind, what would you envision as your preferred future for waste management at OSU? And everybody has about 1 minute to share what their group talked about. And okay, let's start with Alyssa because you're first on my screen.
Okay, I was in breakout room 4, I think, and we kind of came to a consensus that there were 2 or 3 main things that we want to change. The first of that is single-use plastics. And as a partner with that, plastic bottles on campus and the partnership with Pepsi that kind of prohibits that, and bottled water in general. And then we kind of said that our preferred future would be that waste management didn't have to be such a big thing because there would be less waste to manage in the first place.
I love that. Thank you. That's really awesome. Less waste to manage. I'm taking notes, by the way, on all of your great ideas. So. Sweet. We can go to Carla now.
Hi guys, I'm Carla. So we were in break room 2, I believe, and one of the things that we were talking about is goes back to China not receiving our recycling anymore. And so how can we innovate as a campus to close the loop on that recycling? How can we reuse it? Like I was mentioning, there's a company in North Carolina that recycles plastic and makes it into yarn, and so Patagonia buys that yarn and makes new clothes that is recycled fabric. And so, you know, just, you know, bringing all the big ideas to the table and just trying to find a way to close that loop on waste. That was kind of our idea.
I like that. That kind of sounds like systems change to me, which is a great idea. I love that. John, looks like you're next.
Wow, those are both really great ideas. We had kudos for the, let's see, the idea of the information for what's recyclable on campus. That is already, I understand it's already in effect of explaining everybody who is in campus housing has to either take a course or get certified or whatever the word is, that you understand how to recycle the different main items on campus there. And I understand that it takes both on campus and campus associated things like the Greek housing, that sort of thing. It's all part of that. I liked what I heard from you guys on single-use waste. We talked about the example that some communities have done throughout the United States, particularly California, Oregon, Washington, small communities banning disposable plastic bags. The idea, as much as anything, is to get people aware and get the attention, and this is the process of getting attention, both politics and industry, that hey, people care about the problems that this product has, and we're going to be quote unquote in trouble if we don't try to do something about it. And that is a process of getting attention, and maybe there can be some engineering changes or changes in the way products are handled, or the type of packaging is required. It could be a combination of both industry and or, if there's enough momentum behind it, political action, which would be necessary to ban those things on a local level. Overall, look at all kinds of different mechanisms, become aware of climate change, the big issue before we got confronted with the coronavirus. And I think both academically and in the way we conduct business, both for campus, the community, and government. Are we using the best low carbon fuels? Are we moving as rapidly as possible towards replacing carbon-based fuels to solar or other alternative energy sources? I think we need to all become more educated and more driven to impact change through, again, small groups who together can make a significant impact with a number of small groups, react both politically and environmentally with industry. And we want to do that, again, with those 3 pillars of making sure that people, the social impact is positive, particularly on those on the low end of the economic scale, so forth and so on. No direct ideas, but always keeping that in mind and seizing the opportunity as it appears to broadcast that opportunity and get more people to buy on and communicate with small groups throughout the arena, which is a lot easier now than it was 50 years ago with electronic connections. I'll stop.
Thank you, John. That makes me think of several things that We already have in the works a little bit, like you mentioned, the recycling course for freshmen in the dorms. And then also student government just passed a bill, a climate resolution bill, to ensure that the university knows that students are worried about the state of the climate, just the climate emergency. And they also took it to the Capitol so that state representatives know as well. So great ideas, thank you. Looks like Brandon's next.
Hello, everyone. John Duell, who runs the recycling program today at OSU, and I got put in a breakout room together. That was probably not coincidental. So I'm the sustainability officer for everybody who doesn't know me for OSU. So we talked a lot about the upstream impacts as being a really area where we think the future focus of materials management and waste reduction is. Where so many people are pulled in so many different directions every day of their lives, and even more so now, that it feels like we need systems to manage upstream consequences of our wasteful choices, quite frankly, and the systems that have built around that. So that was kind of the future we hoped for. So, and then a couple of examples that John shared were like furniture. Of course, we have a lot of office products, and some of our vendors, including Office Max and Office Depot, offer some choices that we could make today as an institution. And I think that's our maybe our next internal political, I don't want to say battle, but maybe hurdle to work with senior administrators to sort of push the envelope there. So a couple of ideas there. Andrea, did you want me to share now about the link I was going to put in the chat, or save it for later? So I sent Andrea a separate message. There was a question earlier about making donations. And so we do have a pathway to make financial donations if people want to support the campus recycling program. I'll just go ahead and send it in the chat so that people can sort of see there's a link to directly support that and other sustainability programs at OSU. But if you're interested in that, there is a way to do that directly for campus recycling.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Brandon. And it definitely was an accident that you and John were in a room together. I think it would have been cool to like spread you out a little bit, but as always, y'all are a great team. So I appreciate talking about upstream efforts. And Mike is next.
Hi, I think in our group, several people expressed the concept of a kind of a cradle-to-cradle type approach to recycling, that both the vendors, well, the vendors, you have to take some responsibility for making sure that what we're getting gets back to them, and we have to, make sure that we're not purchasing things that are not going to be recycled. So I think that cradle-to-cradle concept, and I think I expressed the idea that one obstacle is this three pillars concept, where we have to worry about the economic viability of a program. And I think maybe that's what happened to the recycling program that was envisioned back in 1970 and in the early days. That what happened is that you had an economic model that worked, but ultimately it didn't work for recycling without this abusing the Chinese or somebody by dumping stuff on them that they couldn't handle humanely. So I think that issue of kind of putting aside the economics, or putting economics ahead of the environment or ahead of society is not helping us. And some other ideas is that OSU is a research institution, and so some of the engineering solutions to creating a cradle-to-cradle economy could be coming out of OSU through engineering research, and also as an educational institution, we should be training people to leave OSU with these concepts embedded in them. So I probably missed some things, but if I guess other people in our group can throw them in if they think it's important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That reminds me of things that our team looked into when we were developing the CUPS proposal in OSU's strategic plan. We talk a lot about innovation, and I think we could definitely focus a lot more on that when it comes to like our environmental and sustainability programs. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you all putting so much thought into these ideas. Can you imagine what our campus would look like if all of these ideas were implemented? Wouldn't that be so cool? But unfortunately, we can't do anything to improve our campus with just these ideas alone. We have to actually act on them. So action is particularly effective when we combine our perspectives and ideas and work together to accomplish them. And Andrea is going to tell you now about ways you can get involved and make change happen on our campus.
Yeah, thanks, Lily, and thanks everyone for sticking it out and participating in discussion. We would like to leave you with this question. What actions can you take to move our community toward this vision, whether that be individually or collectively? We challenge you to really consider this question. Like, what can you do? What can your role be? And since large-scale change cannot happen unless we come together, here are several resources on the slide that you can look up online to connect with others to work on these issues and to share resources. So there's the Waste Watchers Club here at OSU, the Master Recycler class of Lynn and Benton counties, which is co-sponsored by OSU Campus Recycling and Republic Services of Corvallis, and the Waste Prevention Action Team of the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. We also wanted to do a quick shout out to a brand new OSU project that's very in line with the content we discussed today. The OSU Sustainability Office has created an online interactive timeline of sustainability milestones at OSU. Taylor is inserting these links into the chat window, so please open or copy them now before our event closes so you have them. We know this timeline does not represent all of the varied work that's been accomplished at OSU. Since we suspect many of you on the call and know many of you on the call tonight may be familiar with sustainability efforts on campus over time, we invite you to take that submission link to contribute what you know so we can continue to build out this cool new resource. And with that, I'd like to once again say thank you to all of our presenters and our very many event attendees for coming together to celebrate Earth Day with us today. And what I would like to do to end is with one big group wave. So if you know how to, you can put your view mode into gallery view so you can see as many screens as possible. And if you're comfortable turning on your video, we can all say Happy Earth Day, farewell, have an awesome evening. We appreciate everyone who's here.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Bye, everyone.
Good job.
Happy Earth Day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.